More than 200 alleged members of a Venezuelan gang have been deported to El Salvador by the U.S. after President Trump invoked centuries-old wartime legislation over the weekend to expel them.
The deportees arrive in El Salvador despite a federal judge temporarily blocking Mr. Trump's order, demanding all flights carrying the migrants under the presidential proclamation to return to the U.S.
A video released by El Salvador's government showed men in handcuffs and shackles being escorted out of an airplane on the tarmac and taken to prison in a heavily guarded convoy. Now, President Nayib Bukele said the men had been transferred to the Terrorism Confinement Center, a high-security mega jail that can hold up to 40,000 inmates.
Now, these deportees are allegedly part of a Venezuelan criminal organization known as Tren de Aragua. It's been linked to kidnapping, extortion, and contract killings. Venezuela's government said it rejected the use of what it called anachronistic U.S. law, saying it violated human rights.
The Trump administration, however, defending the move, Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying El Salvador had agreed to hold deportees at a fair price. The AP reports that the U.S. has agreed to pay El Salvador $6 million to imprison 300 alleged members of Tren de Aragua for 1 year.
Well, for the very latest, Simon Marks joins us live now from D.C. Hi, Simon. So the deportees, as we've seen in the video, have arrived in El Salvador. Can U.S. courts realistically do anything now?
Well, there's very little the courts can do now as far as those particular deportees are concerned. And the fact that the flight went ahead in violation of a judge's order has really caused a tremendous amount of shock here in Washington, D.C., because it appears to be the first direct moment when the Trump administration has moved forward with a deportation or any other measure for that matter that a court has specifically blocked. Now, what the judge in the case was saying in district court was that he needed more time to determine whether the 1789 Alien Enemies Act could in fact be invoked by President Donald Trump in order to order these deportations at an executive level without any other due process occurring. That act, that 18th century law, has been very rarely used in the United States and is normally reserved for moments of war. In fact, if you go back to 1942, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt invoked the Foreign Enemies Act in order, among other things, to order the internment of approximately 120,000 Japanese Americans who were placed in camps during the Second World War. So there is an enormous series of questions stacking up for the Trump administration about all of this. But in concrete, practical terms, by allowing that flight to remain in the air, not meeting the judge's demand for flights to be returned to the United States, bringing the deportees back with them, well, at least as far as those 238 Venezuelan deportees, this is now a settled issue. They are in jail in El Salvador and will remain there for at least a year.
So, Simon, so how worrying is this that it could set a precedent where Trump and his administration could ignore court orders on other issues?
Well, I think that is the real concern here, because, as you know, we've seen a frenzy of activity in the nearly 9 weeks since Donald Trump was sworn into office. And on a whole variety of fronts, the Trump administration has managed to outrun the courts. The legal system here just has not been able to respond with the rapidity that the administration is acting. And that's been very frustrating to a number of different potential claimants on a number of different potential issues. But this violation of that judge's order, which was delivered on Saturday and essentially was an emergency ruling by the judge, who said time was of the essence and planes either needed to be grounded or returned to the United States, has left lawyers and other non-governmental organizations worried that this may be just the first of more to come.
I think we're on very dangerous ground here. This is as lawless an action as the administration has taken. If the administration is allowed to use wartime authorities anytime it wants to remove people, I think we are going to see more and more people being subjected to this type of Alien Enemies Act and a blurring of wartime authority with domestic authority.
And there are a whole host of other legal judgments that have been handed down that the White House already has refused to say whether it's going to observe. So this may end up proving to have been something of a watershed moment this weekend, the first time that the Trump administration has absolutely ignored a court order and bulldozed the process in order to move ahead with the actions that the president ordered.
Simon, thank you very much for the update there. Simon Marks live from Washington, D.C.